in the dusty village of Umiazala, where the sun scorched the earth until it cracked, and goats wandered freely across narrow footpaths, there lived a girl named Amarachi. People in the village called her names behind her back: Carton Girl, Scareface, or sometimes just that strange child. She was 15, but she walked like someone carrying 100 years of shame every morning. Amarachi would wear a brown cardboard carton over her head. It was cut neatly with holes for her eyes and nostrils, held together by rubber bands and tape. The rest of her body was always covered to long sleeves, gloves, even in the heat. She never took off the carton, not even to drink water during break time. She sat in the back of the classroom, quiet, invisible, like a whisper nobody wanted to hear, and the others made sure she stayed that way. "Why do you wear that thing?" her classmates would tease. "She's probably hiding a demon's face." "No, she must be cursed. Even her own shadow runs from her." She never answered. She never fought back. The carton protected her. From more than just the eyes, it protected her from their laughter. But the truth was this: Amarachi hadn't always worn a carton. Once, she had been like other children. She played by the riverbank, danced in the rain, even braided flowers into her hair. That was before the fire. 3 years ago, her family's small thatch roof hut had caught flame in the middle of the night. A kerosene lamp had spilled. Her father had died trying to pull her from the blaze, and her mother, grief-stricken and hollow, could barely look at Amarachi after the accident. Her face was left scarred, melted in places, uneven in others. She paused. "I wore this carton to protect myself, but also to protect you from what the world becomes when it cannot handle what is different. I did not choose this face, but I chose to keep going." The hall went silent. "I learned that hiding doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps others blind." One side remained beautiful, almost unchanged, but the other had deep ridges like the bark of an Iroquois tree. Villagers whispered that she was a punishment from the gods. Some believed she had survived only because she had made a pact with spirits. Even her mother stopped calling her Amarachi, choosing instead silence, or sometimes just you. Her only friend was Mama Ambik, an elderly herbalist who lived near the forest's edge. Mama Ambik never flinched when she looked at Amarachi. She would say, "My child, there are faces finer than gold, but none shine brighter than truth." Amarachi would just nod. Truth didn't keep the boys from laughing, or the girls from running away. Then came the day. Mr. Shinadu arrived. He was the new teacher, fresh from Nasuka University, with worn-out shoes and a bag full of chalk. He had come to Umiazala as part of the government's rural education initiative. Tall, dark-skinned, with a calm, steady voice, he spoke Igbo and English with ease and wore his humility like a badge. When he first saw Amarachi in her carton, he paused. But unlike the others, he didn't ask questions. He simply nodded at her and continued teaching. After class that day, while students ran off to chase mangoes, Mr. Shinadu walked to Amarachi's desk. "You answered the question about the Nile River perfectly," he said. Amarachi looked up through her eye holes. "Thank you, sir. Do you read a lot?" She nodded. "I borrow books from the library sometimes." "You should join the debate team. Your thinking is sharp." She shook her head. "They won't let me." Mr. Shinadu looked around the empty classroom. Then he crouched beside her. "Amarachi, do you want to be invisible forever?" She didn't know how to answer that. She had gotten so used to hiding. The question felt like a wound. A part of her wanted to scream yes, it was easier that way. But another part, deeper and smaller, whispered no. She didn't want to live in shadows. She just didn't know how not to. That night, Amarachi sat outside her home, listening to crickets, the carton still on her head. Her mother had locked herself in the inner room again. Sometimes she didn't speak for days. Amarachi held a small, torn book in her lap, African Heroines, Queens of Courage. It was one of Mama Ambiki's gifts. She flipped to her favorite page, the story of Queen Amina of Zaria, and read aloud to herself in a whisper. She wore armor, not to hide herself, but to lead her people into battle. Then a goat bleated in the distance, and a soft wind passed through the guava trees, and Amarachi whispered, "I'm tired of hiding." The next morning, the sky was cloudy, and thunder rumbled faintly over Umiazala. But Amarachi didn't feel the usual dread as she tightened the carton over her head and tied the sleeves of her father's old shirt around her wrists. Something had shifted inside her when she reached the schoolyard. She could already hear the jeering voices. "Hey, Carton girl is here. Make sure you don't look at her too long, your eyes might fall out. Why doesn't she just stay in the bush with the other monsters?" Amarachi didn't flinch. She walked straight past them, eyes forward, hands steady. The students laughed, but something in their laughter felt nervous today, like they sensed she wasn't quite the same dot in class. Mr. Shinadu began a new lesson on public speaking and confidence. He spoke passionately, walking among the students as he asked, "What gives people the right to speak? What makes someone's voice matter?" He turned and pointed toward Amarachi. "What do you think, Amarachi?" The classroom fell silent. All eyes turned to the girl in the carton. She hesitated, then spoke softly. "Your story gives you the right. Everyone's story matters." Mr. Shinadu smiled. "Exactly. Your story gives you the right. And hiding your story," he tapped his chest, "hides your strength." After class, he handed her a folded sheet of paper. "There's a writing competition in the district. I think you should enter. The topic is the strength I carry." Amarachi blinked behind her carton. "Me? But you're one of the strongest people I've met." She took the paper silently. "And Amarachi," he added, "strength doesn't mean silence." That night, she sat in the corner of Mama Ambiki's small hut, candlelight dancing over the herb-stained walls. "I want to write something," she said, "but I don't know how to say it." Mama Ambik, sitting with her feet in a basin of hot leaves, looked up slowly. "Then start with the truth," she said. "Truth is the strongest beginning." And so Amarachi wrote. She wrote about the fire, about the screams, about the face she saw in mirrors and the one others whispered about her mother's silence, the laughter of classmates, the carton, the names they called her, but also about the books, the quiet victories, the kind teacher, the old herbalist, the queens in history who didn't hide behind beauty. 3 weeks passed. The day the results were announced, no one paid attention to Amarachi. The school bell rang. Students filed in. The usual teasing buzzed in the air. Then the principal walked into the classroom with a broad smile and a sheet of paper in hand. "Attention, students. We've received news from the state writing board. One of our own has won first prize. Out of 178 entries." The room buzzed. Names flew around. "Chica? As in, maybe Daniel?" "It is." He paused, savoring the moment. "Amarachi's." Silence. You could have heard a mosquito sneeze. Someone in the back whispered, "That can't be." Amarachi stood slowly. Every eye turned to her. The girl in the carton, the ghost of their teasing. Her story, the principal continued, is being published in the National Young Voices magazine. She will represent the region at the Youth Summit in Enugu next month. Still silence. Then Mr. Shinadu clapped. And then a few others joined. Slowly, uncertainly, until the whole class was clapping, some out of shock, others out of shame, and a few perhaps out of awe. Amarachi stood there quietly. For the first time, her carton didn't feel like armor. It felt like a crown. Later that day, in the school courtyard, Chica, the most confident girl in class, approached her. "Your writing, it was really good," she said, biting her lip. Amarachi nodded. "Thank you." Chica hesitated, then said softly, "Can I read more of what you write?" That night, when Amarachi told her mother, she expected the usual silence. "I thought I was protecting you, but I was just hiding too." Amarachi couldn't reply. She crawled onto the mat and laid her head in her mother's lap for the first time in 3 years. They didn't speak for a long time, but they didn't need to. News of Amarachi's writing went spread beyond the school. At first, whispers stirred in the village. Then came the elders' nods of approval. And eventually, a small article in the Enugu Weekly Reader, featuring a grainy photo of Amarachi still in her carton, captioned, "Girl of Courage, the voice behind the mask." People began to see her differently, not because they had seen her face, but because they had finally seen her. The following week, Mr. Shinadu pulled her aside after school. "You'll be giving a speech at the summit," he said, excitement in his eyes. "Just 5 minutes. Your truth, your journey." Amarachi froze. "Me? Speak? In front of people? Yes, he said, smiling. You can write truth. Now you must speak it. That night, she sat on the bamboo stool by the fire outside Mama Ambiki's hut, holding her speech draft with trembling fingers. I'm not ready, she whispered. They'll laugh. Mama Ambik stirred a pot of herbs and didn't look up. They already laughed. And yet, you still walk. Amarachi looked up, startled. Courage isn't about feeling ready, child. It's about showing up anyway. Amarachi lowered her head. Then slowly, she began reading aloud. Her voice was uneven at first, uncertain. But as the words took shape, her fire it strengthened. She read the story of a girl who wore a carton not because she was ashamed of her face, but because the world had never learned to see beyond it. She read about pain, survival, and reclaiming her story. When she finished, Mama Ambik looked at her with wet eyes. Go, she said, and show them what strength sounds like. The youth summit in Enugu was a world Amarachi had never imagined. There were banners, cameras, and people from all over the region, students in neat uniforms, teachers with shining badges, young leaders with confident voices. Her name tag read, Amarachi's Umyazala Community School. She wore her cleanest wrapper and iron blouse. The carton still covered her face. Some looked at her curiously. Others whispered. A few laughed under their breath. But Amarachi kept walking. Backstage, a host adjusted her mic. Are you sure you want to wear that carton on stage? Amarachi simply nodded. The lights were blinding when she stepped out. The crowd was large, maybe 300 people. Some started murmuring again. Then she began to speak. At first, her voice trembled. My name is Amarachi. I come from Umyazala village. I am known by many names. Carton girl, ugly, curse, monster. But today, I tell you my name. She paused. I wore this carton to protect myself, but also to protect you from what the world becomes when it cannot handle what is different. I did not choose this face, but I chose to keep going. The hall went silent. I learned that hiding doesn't keep you safe. It only keeps others blind. I am here to say, I am not a mask. I am not a name. I am not your fear. I am me, and that is enough. By the time she finished, the silence broke into applause. Real applause, not polite, not pitiful but moved. That night, a short clip of her speech went viral. Girl in Carton gives the most powerful speech you'll hear today. Comments flooded in. Some cruel, some confused, but many full of admiration. This girl speaks fire. Her voice gave me chills. She said what I've never been able to say. And somewhere in those comments, one name kept appearing. Dennis Okafor. Dennis was a university student in Nasuka. He had lost his mother when he was 12 and carried his grief like a quiet shadow. He watched Amarachi's video late one night while scrolling through trending feeds. Something in her voice stilled him. He watched it again and again. Then, with a racing heart, he typed, does anyone know how to contact her? Within a week, with the help of a local NGO, he visited Umyazala. The headmistress called Amarachi into her office. There's someone here to see you, she said. Amarachi stepped in, her carton tied carefully. And there he was, tall, warm eyes, gentle smile. I'm Dennis, he said softly. I saw your speech. She blinked from behind the carton. Why did you come? Because I've worn masks too, he said. But I've never seen anyone wear theirs with so much strength. Amarachi didn't know what to say. Over the next few weeks, Dennis returned often. He brought books, talked about the world beyond the village, listened more than he spoke. He never asked to see her face until one afternoon. As they sat under a mango tree, she asked, don't you want to know what's underneath? He looked at her gently. I already see more than most ever will. Tears filled her eyes. He reached forward slowly, and she nodded. He untied the carton. Her face was uneven scars, like rivers across her cheeks. One eye slightly clouded, but her eyes held entire galaxies. He smiled. You're beautiful. And nothing happened. He didn't faint. He didn't recoil. The curse, if it ever existed, had no power here. Amarachi wept not because she believed him instantly, but because someone had looked and stayed. From the day Dennis saw her face, everything changed, but not in the way Amarachi feared. In the days that followed, He treated her the same. If anything, he was kinder, more present, more eager to hear her thoughts on things that mattered. They would sit for hours beneath the mango tree, sometimes talking, sometimes just listening to the wind sweep through the leaves. She still wore her Carton in public, but slowly, a shift began. It started in small ways. She no longer tightened the strings so firmly. She laughed more. She walked straighter. Then one morning, at school assembly, Amarachi stepped forward to give the closing prayer. The entire school turned toward her, waiting for the usual sight of the Carton, but that day, it wasn't there. The entire compound seemed to hold its breath. She stood there, face open to the sun, and raised her voice in a steady, unwavering tone. May we all remember to see not just with our eyes, but with our hearts. When she finished, a single clap echoed, then another, and soon, the entire school was applauding, not because she looked different, but because she had given them something to believe in. That afternoon, Bella came to her. Her voice was low, her eyes unsure. I used to think you were a joke, she said, but now I think maybe I was just scared of being unseen. Amarachi nodded. Me too, for a long time. They stood quietly for a while. Then Bella reached into her bag, pulled out a hand mirror, and handed it to her. You don't need this, Bella said, smiling faintly. But maybe you want to see what we all see now. Amarachi looked at her reflection, and for the first time, she didn't look away. By the end of that school year, Amarachi received another letter, this time from a publishing house in Lagos. They wanted to turn her speech and writing into a small book for young girls across Africa. The title, The Girl in the Carton with the Money from the Book. Amarachi was able to help rebuild the school library, start a reading program for girls in the village, and support Mama Mbiki's herbal medicine business. Dennis stood by her every step of the way, and though they never rushed anything, it was clear to everyone that theirs was a love born not of looks, but of shared scars, silent understanding, and truth spoken in whispers. On the day of her university send-off, the village gathered to celebrate Amarachi. The chief handed her a carved wooden plaque with the inscription, "To the girl who taught us all to see." She stood before them in a beautiful Ankara dress, her face uncovered, her eyes bright, and around her head, the children had made her a crown woven from banana leaves and sugarcane ribbon. It wasn't gold. It wasn't glittering, but it was real, just like her. And so, the girl who once wore a carton to school because the world could not face her, walked barefoot into a future that was finally ready to see her fully, clearly, and with love.